Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make a blueberry cheesecake. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Today we are making a delicious blueberry cheesecake. I think you're going to absolutely love this one. So let's go ahead and begin by making our graham cracker crust. Now for the crust, you're going to need 1.5 cups of graham cracker crumbs, 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and 1 tablespoon of firmly packed light brown sugar. We'll stir all of these ingredients together until they're well combined. And then we're going to add our butter. For today's recipe, I'm using 5 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. We'll add this in. Again, we're just gonna stir everything together until all of those graham cracker crumbs are nicely moistened by the butter. We'll be baking today's cheesecake in a 9-inch round springform pan. I definitely recommend a springform pan and not a cake pan for today's recipe. If you don't have one, I will make sure to leave a link in the description so you can grab one. It's really an essential tool for making cheesecake. Now I'm going to add my graham cracker crumbs, and I'm just going to evenly tamp them down into the bottom of the pan, and I also want to press them up the sides of the pan as high as I possibly can. I'm just going to use a glass to do this. It just helps make the job a little bit easier. But you should be able to get a nice even layer on the bottom, and then you can see I'm 2/3 to 3/4 of the way up the sides of the pan. Now we'll set this aside. You don't need to bake it, but you do want to get your oven preheating to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the temperature we're going to be baking our cheesecake on. All right, now let's start making our cheesecake filling. This is a variation of my super popular, super easy cheesecake recipe. No water bath required. I think you're going to love it. We're going to begin by combining 24 ounces of full-fat brick-style cream cheese in a large mixing bowl. You don't want to use the spreadable kind of cream cheese that comes in a tub that contains additives, and your cheesecake just won't turn out properly if it's made with that cream cheese. Now we'll also be adding 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. And then you could do this with a stand mixer, but today I'm going to be using my electric mixer. And we'll cream together the cream cheese and the sugar until everything is smooth and lump-free. All right, once I have that sugar and cream cheese nicely combined, I like to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl to make sure there are no lumps. All right, that's looking pretty good. All right, the next thing you'll need for today's recipe is a 1/2 cup of full-fat sour cream. And I also like to add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and we'll stir these in as well. Next, you're going to need 3 large eggs. Now, ideally, these would be at room temperature. And what I like to do is we're going to add the eggs one at a time. And I'm just going to crack them in a small bowl and lightly scramble them with a fork before adding it to the cheesecake batter. So after each addition, I'm just going to stir just until the egg is combined. Now, whenever you're making cheesecake, you don't ever want to really overbeat the batter, and you especially don't want to overbeat it once you've added the eggs. If it's overbeaten, you can end up with a kind of a weird texture or an eggy taste, so just go nice and easy, but do make sure the eggs are completely incorporated. And we'll do this with all 3 eggs. All right, now your blueberries. We will be using 2 cups of fresh blueberries for today's recipe, and I'll just go ahead and stir these in and fold them in with a spatula. Don't use your electric mixer here. Okay, so we'll add this batter into our springform pan that we prepared right there in our graham cracker crust. Now, because we put our crust up so high, you can see our cheesecake batter is sitting just below the top of that crust line. This is great because as the cheesecake cools, the crust is going to contract with it. You're not going to have any awkward tension, and that tension is what typically causes cracks. So this is looking nicely set so we won't have any cracks with our cheesecake. Now, if you didn't quite plan yours out exactly like this and your cheesecake is touching the side of the pan, don't panic. We're going to be putting a delicious blueberry topping on top, so even if yours ends up with cracks, it's not a big deal. All right, we'll take this over to our 325 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven, where it's going to need to bake for about 45 to 50 minutes. Now I want to show you how it looks when it's finished. When your cheesecake is done baking, if you slightly jostle it, the center will still jiggle some, but you can see that it's mostly set. It's not like it's liquid inside there. Also, if you lightly touch the top of your cheesecake, it should spring back to the touch. Now, as with any cheesecake, this one is going to need to cool and to chill before you can serve it. So we're going to let this cool at room temperature for about an hour, then we'll pop it in the fridge where it will need to chill for at least 6 hours or preferably overnight before you serve it. Now, the crowning glory on today's cheesecake is the fresh blueberry topping that we're going to be preparing in just a minute. I like to prepare that while my cheesecake is cooling, but I don't add it until the cheesecake has set completely. Now, for that blueberry topping, we're going to head over to the stovetop where you're going to need a small or medium-sized saucepan. Here we'll combine 1/4 cup of granulated sugar with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. We'll just whisk these together until they're combined. Now for the topping, I have 3 cups of blueberries total, but I'm only going to be adding half of those, or 1.5 cups, into the saucepan right now. We'll also be adding 1 tablespoon of lemon juice and 1/4 cup of water. Now stir everything together until it's combined, and then turn your stovetop heat to be about medium heat or just a notch below medium. Now stir the blueberries constantly until they release their juices and the sauce thickens. Exactly how long this takes can really vary from house to house or stovetop to stovetop. I'd say it usually takes about 8 minutes total for me. It should be pretty obvious because not only will the whole pot look like a nice juicy blueberry jam, the blueberries will be a little bit softer to touch with a spatula, it'll be nice and thickened. If at any point your sauce becomes too thick, like if you accidentally have the heat a little bit too high, you can add another tablespoon or so of water just to loosen things up a bit. All right, now this is looking pretty much perfect, so I'm going to remove it from the heat. And now I'm going to add my remaining 1.5 cups of fresh blueberries. And I'm also going to add a tablespoon of butter. Salted butter or unsalted butter, whatever you have on hand is fine. We'll stir this in until the blueberries are completely combined and that butter is completely melted. All right, this is still pretty hot. I like to let it cool before I add it to my cheesecake, and as I mentioned, I like the cheesecake to be set before I add it as well. Now I do have a cheesecake I prepared yesterday for today's video. I'm gonna go ahead and grab that. And after about half an hour in the fridge, my blueberry topping, not filling, is a pretty good consistency. If yours is thickened too much, you can either let it sit at room temperature for a bit, or you can add a splash of water at a time and stir that in until you have a nice consistency. It shouldn't be super loose, it shouldn't be super thin, but it should be spreadable. All right, now I'm just going to simply add this over my cheesecake. And that's really it. You could absolutely cut into this cheesecake immediately if you'd like. The topping will kind of slide a little bit. If you want it to be set and you want a nice neater slice, just pop the cheesecake in the fridge for 30 minutes before you slice into it. I'm going to let mine sit for a couple of minutes, and now we can go ahead and dig in. All right, look at that. That filling is perfect, that creamy cheesecake. I think you guys are absolutely going to love this recipe, and I seriously can't wait for you to try it out. If you do, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is the best part. I have the best job. So good.